students what you learned this week working with your scene partner. Did you come to any realizations? Did you make a breakthrough? What happened this week?
Good. I kind of felt like I had like a big like revelation this week.
Uh-huh.
So something that you always preach and have always preached from the beginning is like think your character's thoughts. And that is such a big thing and was something I thought I was doing and like I felt like I was doing. But it happened to be just like the way you worded it last Sunday in class about how like, yeah, you're thinking your character's thoughts, but like you're thinking them at the other person, like you're replying to them in your head. And that, I don't know what it was about that time, but like it really clicked. And
Uh-huh.
so it was just kind of like, oh my, like, what? This is crazy. So when we were practicing this week, I could feel that difference and I could feel like I was actually beginning to connect with her and
Uh-huh.
she was actually beginning to really trigger me. And it just like began to feel like so much more real. So I don't know, it was really cool to feel that because like I thought I'd been
I
doing that, but it was like,
Yeah, it's magical because, when I say you got to think your character's thoughts, so many times people are just thinking about what their character is involved in. And there's a huge difference between just thinking about the circumstances. A lot of times people say, I say, what are you thinking? Like, well, I'm upset. But that's not a thought. Emotions are not thoughts. What you need to do to think your character's thoughts is actually talk to the other person in your mind. Okay. It's just like talking, only you are not doing it out loud. Your lips aren't moving. Okay. But everything else moves. If you're just thinking, oh, come on, give me a break, everything happens except your lips, right? And the sound that comes out of your voice, because you're going, you're thinking, oh, come on, give me a break. And it moves your body. It lets you actually express yourself and talk to the other person, respond to the other person constantly. It's a constant thing. You're either talking to them in your mind and saying, oh, come on, give me a break. Don't do that. That's not true. Come on, I'm nice. I am good to you. How can you say that? Just a whole roll of conversation in your mind until you speak. And then you speak out loud and you say the lines that are written there, but they are an extension of what you've just been thinking. What you've been thinking leads into it, right? And then when you finish speaking, you keep thinking what you were just saying. You keep expounding on it until the other person says something that changes that thought and makes you think something else like, whoa, wait a minute. That's something completely different. All right. You're thinking something else until you've got to speak again. You're answering them as they speak. Right? They're saying all these different things, and each sentence they say makes you think something else, right? These are not just random thoughts. The other person's line triggers a thought in your head. And then they say something else, and that triggers something else. And then they say something else, and that triggers another response. So when I make you write your monologue as a dialogue, you write what the other person is thinking, right? When you're doing a monologue, you have to always know what the other person's thinking. Well, when the other person is talking, you do the opposite. You write the response to what they're saying, and that's what you think. Does that make sense? Now, you don't have to write it. It can just be spontaneous if you can do that, but it might be helpful to look ahead and look at their lines and think, now, what would I be thinking if she said this? And how would that make me feel? What would it make me think back to her? What would I want to say right back to her? And then how does that lead into what I have to say? I hope that everybody understands that, because it's something that's fairly unique to my technique, to what I teach. Not many teachers teach this way, but it works, doesn't it, Allison? Doesn't it really work? I mean, I see it like miraculously work, even with little kids, with tried and true actors who've never done it before, and they go, oh my God, that was different. You know, I really have something to do all the time. It keeps you busy, doesn't it? It keeps you in your character's mind, and your character doesn't, you know, have to have your thoughts creeping in there, because you're constantly responding as your character, right?
For a while, I thought my problem was maybe that the thoughts I was having weren't like specific enough, but I'm coming to realize I think it's actually the opposite. It's like I was almost thinking too like logically about the situation, and not just thinking more of a like, oh, come on. It gets more of a it's like more of a reaction.
I think it's really good to think, you know, when you look at the other person's lines, just to really think, how does that make me feel? If somebody said that to me, how would it make me feel? Now let me take my character's point of view. How does that make my character feel, right? And what is my immediate response to hearing that, right? It's an emotional reaction that's personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's specific to the relationship. And it's a immediate reaction.
I think sometimes I would get very into like, I think like, oh, why are you saying that? But then I'd start thinking like, oh, is it because of this? Is it because of that? Like
in your like in your particular scene, I think a lot of what she's saying is, oh my God, I had no idea that you were thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hurtful that you did. How could you have done that? I thought our friendship was completely different than this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, make it specific, but it's a personal emotional reaction with words,
mm-hmm.
right? It's not about your emotions. It's actually speaking of the feelings that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
I started having those moments where I was thinking so many thoughts during her lines and like they weren't in reaction to her lines either. They were just kind of like about her, like, oh, I hate this girl. Basically, I just kept thinking different variations of this girl is terrible. And that wasn't really working for me. And then like she would say a line, and then it would be my turn for me to say a line. And I would not know where I was in the scene because I wasn't thinking about that specific moment in the scene.
Right.
But then once I started thinking in reaction to each individual line she was saying, and not even thinking about my thoughts, like I was just thinking like, really? You think I'm under some misconception? It was much easier to react within a reasonable amount of time to what she was saying. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Just keep remembering what the other person says triggers your line. Now it makes you think something that makes you say your line, right? Because you can't just speak without a reaction. Okay. It's hear. What do you mean by that? Speak. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Hear, how dare you speak, right? But it's what they say that makes you think something that then makes you say something. And so the thought has got to lead to the line, right? Doesn't it make it feel more real? Because that's what we do in real life. We always react to what somebody else says. We're hearing it, we're responding, and then we speak back. That's the process of communication.
You've got to use the actual character's thoughts like everybody's discussing, because I was trying to be that angry guy from the beginning. And so I just sat there and in my mind was saying, you're going to F this up over and over.
But usually thinking the same thing over and over again will get you the same reaction over and over again, and then nothing changes. You know what I'm saying? Is that our emotions are a process. What makes it a process is changing your thoughts, of letting yourself go through, well, that's okay, but what? Not that. No way. How dare you? Right? That you're constantly reacting to what they're saying and to what's happening, and then you are always changing. If you just think the same sentence over and over and over again, you will stay the same. Your body reacts and responds, your eyes, everything responds to what your thoughts are saying. And so you've got to keep those thoughts moving and changing and reacting to what's happening in the moment, and then your facial expressions and everything that you do will be appropriate to the moment. Exactly. And I think it's a good idea to record your rehearsals. You don't ever want to try to look the way you did in rehearsal. Go, oh, I like that. Now, then it starts to be like, let me try to do what I did with my face there, because that's never going to happen. You can never try to recreate your facial expressions. That's like people trying to recreate the facial expressions of a famous actor. You know, you've got to come up with it on your own. And every single performance ought to be uniquely your own, because you're a different person. You're not that actor, you know, and it should, you are a different vessel for your character to live in than they are. And so you should allow your character to actually use who you are to make this a new performance, right? Something unique and interesting. And because you're a unique person, that's what you have to sell. What else do you have to give this world except the unique person that you are as an artist? And maybe better than that very famous actor. You know, you need to process it through your own artistic lenses.
But I had really been trying to work on, you know, the continuous flow of thoughts. And I was trying to think about what part of my performance had these gaps in them. And I realized it was pretty consistent. It was always like that second right after my line, because I would always have the thought that led into my line, but like the very second after that starts before my partner's line.
Right. There's that dead space where she's still reacting to you. She hasn't started talking yet. And that's what I was saying, is that you need to continue saying what you just said. For instance, if you just said, don't move away, I want you to stay here, right? Then before the person says anything, yes or no, you're saying, I need you. Really, you just continue saying what you're saying, but not the same line, but continue on that topic until she starts talking. And then she interrupts your thoughts and makes you go, oh, well, that in that case, right? So her lines are what change your thoughts, but you just continue to say what you've been on that topic of what you just said, and go further with it in your mind until she interrupts you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that what you discovered? Did you do that?
Yeah. Because I think with monologues, you don't really have that, because you like instantly know the reaction of the other person and don't have to like wait for them to react and speak their line. So I think that's why I was kind of doing the scene like we had been doing the monologues. So yeah, it was really helpful to.
Yeah. And monologues, it's the opposite problem. A lot of times you jump to your next line without responding or really reacting to what they've said. Or sometimes if you've been doing what I ask you and you write those whole, the whole dialogue there, that you're sitting there listening to the whole sentence rather than just interrupting them but reacting, but interrupting and then going in. So you don't have a big space there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're completely different kinds of acting, you know, being actually live with a person and acting with an imaginary person. It's very, very different, because you're in charge with the imaginary person. You have to see it all happen. You have to actually create their performance in your mind as you're responding to it. So that's completely different.
So when me and Spence were going through our stuff today, I realized that when I am in my head so much, I start to do unnecessary movements because I'm in my head. You know,
What do you mean by in your head?
Like, I'm thinking too much about what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense. I think too much about what I'm doing, and I start to all these unnecessary ass movements. So I'm like, okay, I think I need to focus more on what I'm trying to say rather than what I'm trying to be. It could be
in other words, another way of saying that, because when you're saying you're thinking about what you're doing, those are Godwin thoughts, aren't they?
Yeah, very, very much so.
They're not your character's thoughts. You're not supposed to have even one single Godwin thought in your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Your own thoughts are not welcome. Okay. The way you get rid of your own thoughts is by thinking your character's thoughts. Now, what is your character thinking about? They're thinking about what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're thinking about making, choosing the right words to affect that other person. Your character's also thinking about whatever it is the other person made him think. The other person is triggering your thoughts and your words. Okay? And your words are talking. They're the same as talking, but silently. Thoughts are just as important as what you say. What you think when you're acting in between your lines is just as important as what you say. And you could be a leading character in a movie and never say a single word and still have a ton to say. Why? Because you're always thinking, and thinking is the same thing as talking. You need to be thinking actual sentences that you are saying to the other person as they're saying something to you. If they say, "What in the hell's wrong with you?" and you go, "Wrong with me?" you're going to think that. And then you might say, "You better watch it, buddy." That "wrong with me" has to happen because it's a reaction to what's wrong with you. If you don't react to what's wrong with you, then you just go, he goes, "What's wrong with you?" And you go, "You better watch it, buddy." And there's no reaction really. Okay. Acting is reacting. So he says, "What's wrong with you?" You go, "Wrong with me? You better watch it, buddy." That's what makes your sentence make sense. Your reaction to the other person. You need to be talking to the other person in sentences all the time. So you're either talking with your brain silently, which is the same as everything is the same as talking, except your lips aren't moving and your voice isn't making sounds. But everything else responds in the same way. Or you're talking. So thinking, talking, talking, thinking, thinking, talking, talking, thinking. There's no time for any of your own thoughts to be in there.
Another issue that I usually encounter when I'm with the thinking the thoughts is I'm blocking out Spencer's conversation and not receiving it while I'm trying to think about how I'm going to deliver my next line.
You don't need to think about how you're going to deliver your line.
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
You need to let his lines trigger your thoughts. That's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about what he's saying, which leads you into your line. Okay, that's his lines should always make you say your lines eventually. But as he's talking, if he's talking for a while, you need to be going, "I don't think that's true." "Oh, really? You think so? Come on. That hurts my feelings." "Okay, you better watch it." All right. So though your thoughts will be constantly changing as he's speaking according to what he's saying. Right? But if you're not listening to what he's saying, if you're not hearing it, that means you don't know what to think. How would you know what to think? You have to hear it. As you hear it, you're thinking something. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
The way you start off your sentences with having that reaction from the other person for you to react to makes it feel a lot more natural than it just coming out of thin air. Just yesterday I was doing an audition, and a lot of the time, while I had a little bit of a monologue, I would have a sentence, and I couldn't just start the sentence off as just out of thin air. I would have had to thought about what the person had said right after I said that first line to make me say the next sentence in my, next sentence to react to say the next sentence.
Your thoughts, your feelings, everything are dependent on what's just been said.
Yeah.
Talking with mama.
You'll have to forgive Ellis. He gets very depressed this time of year. He thought he was God's greatest gift.
I know the type. He's got his eye on you.
That's okay. I have mine on his private bathroom. So, where are you staying? This all happened so fast, I didn't get a chance to ask you on the phone.
Cappy Roberts retired out here a couple years ago.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he said I could bunk with him.
Cappy retired, huh?
Mm.
Where does he live?
Ramona?
Pomona.
Huh?
Pomona.
Pomona.
Yeah.
When you guys get to being upset with each other, then you really get triggered. But it's the first part that seems disjointed because you're not actually being triggered there. Okay? You're just kind of saying your lines. Oh, I know the type, right? Now, what thought makes you say that? What does she say that makes you think something that then makes you say that? Because I'm missing the thoughts that from what she says to what you say.
Hmm.
Now, what does she say right before you say, I know the type?
She says I need to forgive this asshole coworker of hers for being
okay. You need to forgive him. He's just like this. Now, What does that make you think, Randy? What are you actually thinking? As though you're saying it.
Oh, I mean, he's just a slime ball, no matter what. And why should I be forgiving this guy?
So wife? She says you'll have to forgive Ellis, right? And you have right away you're thinking, oh, I do, I have to. And why is that? And she says he thinks he's God's gift. Oh, please. What an asshole. I know the type. Because there can be no dead space between what you think and what you say. Otherwise, it becomes an isolated statement on your part. I know the type, right? And
right.
It felt isolated to me as though you weren't reacting to what she just said. Okay, so could you do that again? And I want you to really react to what she's saying and let I know the type lead you into saying he's got his eye on you. I know the type after everyone's wife and thinking that he's so great that he has personal access to every woman that's around him. Isn't that what that means? So that it will lead into, I think he's got his eye on you. Right?
Gotcha.
So what do you really want to say to her?
He wants to have sex with you.
All right. But is that really what you want to say to her? Are you his messenger?
I don't want to be because I don't want her to think
right.
that,
so really, what do you want to say? You should really stay the fuck away from him.
God.
Say that. You should really stay the fuck away from him.
You really need to stay the fuck away from him.
You know he's got his eye on you. You should stay the fuck away from him. It pisses me off that he's got his eye on you. Right?
Yeah.
If you have the thoughts, it's going to happen within you. Okay, so let's say them out loud. Say the thoughts out loud while she's talking, okay? So just try it, okay?
You'll have to forgive Ellis.
Why would I forgive him?
He gets very depressed this time of year.
I don't give a shit. What the fuck?
He thought he was God's greatest gift.
Well, he's fucking not, and he's not fucking you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's try it doing exactly the same thing, only it's not vocal.
Okay.
Everything is the same except the voice. Okay.
You'll have to forgive Ellis. He gets very depressed this time of year. He thought he was God's greatest gift.
I know the type. He's got his eye on you.
Good. Now that was the best so far, right?
Yes.
Did it feel any different to you?
Yeah, it did.
Everybody else see a difference? I think it's huge. It's personally huge. Okay. Because if you try to say a line without all the thoughts that come before it, it's just so isolated. It's like you're just saying the line because it's on a page.
Right.
Okay. You need to have your character come up with it because of what's just happened. Everything you say is because of what you've just thought, because of what she's just said.
Cool.
Yeah. And even if you record just her, doing her lines so that you can just talk back to her when you're practicing by yourself, that will really help you to get that rolling, to really get those thoughts live leading into your lines. Now, when she's talking about the Pomona and you're talking about the Ramona and all that kind of stuff, what are you two really thinking about?
I think I was just kind of thinking that it was funny that he got it wrong.
Well, when you start to ask him where he's staying,
mm-hmm.
You're leading up to asking him to stay with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So where are you staying? Because I'm about to ask you, because I really would love to have you stay with me.
Yeah.
And he says Ramona, and you're going, where? I mean, is that Pomona? That's really far. That's a good, and it's a good opportunity for you to use that as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really ready to say, well, you're going to be in the car the whole time. You better stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
But all of it is your intention to get him to stay with you, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to keep that in your mind instead of starting to talk about the different areas of California and what's convenient. That's not really what you're talking about, is it?
No.
So right away, Siobhan, you need to start thinking, Pomona, that's far.
Yeah.
Because you're just going, oh, let's talk about neighborhoods. Is it? Pomona? That isn't what you're talking about, is it?
No.
You've got to lead up into inviting him over. That's why you ask him.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to be headed where you want to go.
Right.
And keep the thoughts rolling in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Pomona? All the way to hell out there? Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Pomona? That's funny, right? Pomona? You're and Randy, I also came to me that you're probably thinking about, why didn't she invite you in the first place?
Right.
You had to go call this guy and say, I'm going to be in town, and he's out all the way hell out in some godforsaken place. Then there doesn't have to be all that dead space because you're sort of waiting for something to happen, aren't you? Oh, well, you're going to be in the car a long time. No, that should be happening as soon as you say Pomona,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Good. Now, do you see where I'm going with all this? What am I trying to get you to do?
Think about where we're going with it, and kind of keep driving towards that the whole time.
Right, because every single thing you say is got to be towards your objective. And if you're saying stuff that's not to your objective, then you're wasting ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
It's worthless. It's meaningless conversation. And there's no such thing as meaningless conversation in a script. Now, people sometimes do, but they really always have intention. And if we're talking about something that doesn't even apply, but we've got our reasons to talk about it. And so you've got to make what you say apply to your objective and what your character is feeling and wanting in the moment. Randy, really getting into what he must be thinking and what he's going through and what he had to go through to get here to spend Christmas with his children. So when you say, oh, they do, then why didn't you invite me before? And why did you change your name? God damn it. Right? Right. You see how it's all the same. It's all the same topic, even though you're using different venues and tactics to get there. But you need to stay in your character's world as you're talking. Nothing that you say is meaningless. Nothing is for nothing. Okay. So sometimes things mean completely different things. Like when you say, yeah, so-and-so said I could bunk with him because you didn't ask me, right? That's what that means, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of digging a little deeper into your character's world and understanding why they're saying what they're saying. Does that all make sense? Do you know what to work on for next time?
I think so. Yeah. Who
Good.
did such a classic little Christmas movie had such deep layers and meaning? I don't.
Everything does.
Just
Everything has deep layers and meaning because that's what makes us talk to each other.
right.
Right? We don't talk for no reason. Human beings don't talk for no reason. There's always a lot of stuff going on, between human beings. And this is not an easy relationship, is it?
Mm-mm.
It's a complicated situation. So even though it might be a little holiday movie or whatever it is, it's definitely about their relationship, and that's complicated.
Right.
So just find what your character would be thinking in every single moment. That's all. And it will all come. It will all come out. If you can just sit and talk as your character, what in the hell is with this woman? She says she's married to me. She wants me to stay with her now. Why didn't she ask me in the first place? Just sit there and talk as your character. I think that will really help you, Randy. And you too, Siobhan. I think this will make a huge difference for you both. So let's see what we can do with it this week, okay?
Talking with my